The year was 1945. It was a time of great change and hope. The world had just emerged from the shadows of World War II, and people everywhere were eager to rebuild their lives and look forward to a brighter future. World War II had just ended, soldiers were returning home, and families were reuniting after years of separation. The air was filled with a sense of relief and optimism. Families across America were celebrating peace and the joy of Christmas. Homes were adorned with festive decorations, and the spirit of the season was palpable. It was a time for togetherness, for love, and for making cherished memories. In Fayetteville, West Virginia, the Sodder family, Italian immigrants living the American dream, prepared for a joyous Christmas morning. George and Jenny Sodder had worked hard to build a life for their family in this small, close-knit community. George and Jenny Sodder had 10 children. Their home was always filled with laughter, love, and the bustling energy of a large family. Each child brought their own unique personality and joy to the household. Their home buzzed with anticipation for Santa's arrival. The children had spent the day decorating the Christmas tree, hanging stockings, and eagerly discussing what gifts they might receive. The excitement was infectious, and even the adults couldn't help but feel the magic of the season. The younger children, excited for presents, begged to stay up past their bedtime. They wanted to catch a glimpse of Santa Claus, to see if he really did come down the chimney with a sack full of toys. Jenny relented, allowing them to stay awake a bit longer. She understood their excitement and didn't want to dampen their spirits. After all, Christmas was a time for joy and wonder. This decision would later haunt her. As the night wore on, the children eventually drifted off to sleep, their dreams filled with visions of Christmas morning. Jenny and George also retired for the night, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. Late that night, a fire erupted. It started quietly, a small flicker that quickly grew into a raging inferno. The flames spread rapidly, consuming everything in their path. It engulfed the Sodder home in a raging inferno. The fire roared with a ferocity that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. The once cozy and festive home was now a scene of chaos and destruction. The smell of smoke woke Jenny. She bolted upright, her heart pounding with fear. The acrid scent filled her nostrils, and she knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. She screamed, alerting the family to the imminent danger. Her cries pierced the night, rousing George and the children from their slumber. Panic set in as they realized the gravity of the situation. George, Jenny, and 5 of their children miraculously escaped the flames. They scrambled out of the house, their minds racing with fear and confusion. The cold December air hit them as they emerged into the night, but the relief of being alive was overshadowed by the horror of what was happening. They scrambled out into the cold December night, their faces illuminated by the fire's terrifying glow. The flames cast eerie shadows on their faces, and the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were safe, but their home, their memories, and their possessions were being consumed by the fire. The Sodder family stood together, holding each other close as they watched their world burn. 5 of the Sodder children remained trapped inside. Marion, Sylvia, John, George Jr., and 5-year-old Betty were unaccounted for. Panic seized George. His children were trapped inside the burning house. He had to save them. George desperately tried re-entering the house, but the flames drove him back. He raced to his coal truck, hoping to use it to climb to a second-story window. The truck, normally a reliable workhorse, refused to start. He tried again and again. It was as if some unseen force had rendered it useless. Frantic, George searched for his ladder. He knew it was leaning against the house, always kept there for easy access. It was gone, vanished. The fire raged on, consuming the house and his hopes with it. George grabbed a bucket, racing to collect water from a nearby pond. The winter had been harsh, and the pond was frozen solid. His efforts felt futile against the ferocity of the blaze. Every second felt like an eternity as his children remained trapped. Section 4. The Missing Ladder and the Delayed Response. In the quiet town of Millfield, the fire department was a symbol of safety and reliability. Their vintage fire trucks, polished to a shine, stood ready for any emergency. The firefighters, known for their swift responses, were the town's unsung heroes. On that fateful day, someone had to call the fire department. The air was thick with panic as smoke billowed from the Johnsons' house. Mrs. Johnson, with trembling hands, reached for the telephone, hoping to hear the reassuring voice of the switchboard operator. But the phone lines were dead. The town's aging infrastructure had failed at the worst possible moment. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening, a stark contrast to the growing chaos outside. A neighbor, seeing the desperate situation, ran to a nearby drugstore, the closest place with a working phone. The streets, usually calm and serene, echoed with the sound of hurried footsteps. Inside the drugstore, the clerk quickly dialed the fire department, his hands shaking as he relayed the urgent message. The fire department, usually quick to respond, was inexplicably delayed. Precious time slipped away as the firefighters struggled to locate a missing ladder, a crucial piece of equipment. The alarm bells rang out, but the response was agonizingly slow. By the time the fire trucks arrived, the house had collapsed into a smoldering ruin. The once vibrant home, filled with memories and laughter, was now a charred skeleton. The firefighters, their faces etched with frustration and sorrow, could only watch as the flames consumed everything. The fire had burned hot and fast, fueled by an unseen intensity. The dry summer air and the wooden structure created a perfect storm, turning the house into an inferno within minutes. The heat was unbearable, and the flames danced with a ferocity that seemed almost alive. The firefighters could do nothing but douse the remaining embers. Their efforts, though valiant, came too late. The water from their hoses hissed and steamed as it met the glowing coals, but the damage was already done. The fire had taken its toll. Hope flickered and died with each passing moment. The townspeople gathered, their faces a mix of shock and grief. They stood in silence, mourning the loss of a home and the memories it held. The fire had not only destroyed a house, but had also left a scar on the community, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of every second in an emergency. Section 5. Where were the remains? Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The Sodders clung to the faint hope that their children had somehow escaped the inferno. They searched the woods tirelessly, put up missing posters in every town and city they could reach, and prayed for a miracle every single day. Their faith was unwavering, and their determination unyielding. The authorities conducted a thorough search of the ashes, combing through every inch of the charred remains of the Sodder home. They expected to find remains, some evidence of the children's fate. Even in the most intense fires, bone fragments usually survive. Forensic experts know that bones and teeth are incredibly resilient to heat, but there was nothing. No bones, no teeth, no trace of the children at all. The official explanation was that the fire had been so hot that it had completely incinerated the children's bodies, leaving no trace whatsoever. But George Sodder knew this was impossible. He had seen many fires in his lifetime and knew the capabilities of fire. He had used coal to heat his home for years and was well aware of its properties. Coal fires do not burn that hot. They can reach high temperatures, but not enough to completely disintegrate bones and teeth. George was convinced that something was amiss. He began to question the official narrative and sought answers from anyone who would listen. He spoke to neighbors, friends, and even strangers, hoping to find someone who had seen or heard something unusual on that fateful night. The community was divided. Some believed the official explanation, while others supported George's quest for the truth. Rumors and theories began to circulate, adding to the mystery. George even hired private investigators to look into the case. They uncovered several inconsistencies and strange occurrences that night, but nothing concrete enough to provide answers. One of the most puzzling aspects was a phone call received by the Sodders on the night of the fire. The caller asked for someone who didn't live there, and when told they had the wrong number, they laughed strangely and hung up. Additionally, the fire department's response was unusually slow, despite the station being only a few miles away. By the time they arrived, the house was already reduced to ashes. The ladder that was always kept at the side of the house was mysteriously missing, later found at the bottom of an embankment some distance away. The phone line to the house had been cut, further complicating the situation. All these anomalies pointed to something more sinister than a simple house fire. George Sodder's resolve only grew stronger. He was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how long it took or how difficult the journey would be. The Sodder family continued their search, driven by love and the hope that one day they would find out what really happened to their beloved children. Section 6. Whispers of Kidnapping. As time passed, whispers of a more sinister possibility began to circulate: kidnapping. Eyewitnesses came forward, claiming to have seen the children in the days following the fire. A bus driver reported seeing the children in a passing car. A woman working at a diner recalled seeing them with strangers. These eyewitness accounts, while fragmented, painted a chilling picture. The Sodder children may not have died in the fire. They might have been taken, but by whom and for what reason? The mystery deepened.